What's up, people? Joe Winko here, your favorite Hawaiian guy, and here's my next episode of Joe Winko Talk. So, this is going to be an X-rated episode, just letting you all know. So, if you're under 18, please don't watch this video because things get really steamy and hot and heavy in this video. The things I'm going to be talking about are. However, it's not quite as sexual as my last episode that I did. This episode of Joe Winko Talk is going to be about a dream that I had a little while ago, but there's more scientific and interesting stuff about this dream that I'm going to be discussing, really. I had this dream last year, roughly, when I was living with my adoptive dad's brothers down in Clearwater, Florida. And as you guys should all know, if you've been watching me long enough, that was a very miserable time in my life because I was scared about the coronavirus and my adoptive dad's brothers weren't taking it seriously, and I was literally scared to leave my bedroom. So I was always locked in my bedroom by myself, didn't have anyone with me at all, and it wasn't a good time in my life, honestly. I had this dream when I fell asleep while using my computer, and in the dream I woke up sitting in front of my computer, and this man was in my bedroom with me, and he was really, really close to me. He had his arms like wrapped around my back, and he was sucking on my nipple. And I didn't know who he was at first. I never found out who he was. But at first, I thought he was my adoptive dad's brother, because that's exactly what he looked like, because he was a white guy with brown hair. So I thought he was one of my adoptive dad's brothers. And at first, I was getting really pissed off, because I always tried to keep away from my adoptive dad's brothers, because they weren't taking coronavirus seriously. And I was just thinking, okay, what the fuck is he doing in my room? And what the fuck is he doing this close to me? And what the fuck is he doing sucking on my nipple with his arms around my back? And I was getting heated up and pissed off, and I was ready to pound this guy's ass to a bloody pulp. Not usually the way I would pound a guy's ass, but I was getting ready to pound this guy's ass to a bloody pulp. But then when I looked closer at him, I realized that he wasn't my adoptive dad's brother. Even though he was a white guy with brown hair, he still wasn't my adoptive dad's brother. Because the first thing I noticed right away was that he was wearing this dark red, maroon, velvet colored suit. I'll have a picture of it in this video. This is what he was wearing. So that's what this man in my dream was wearing. He was wearing that suit. And I was just thinking to myself, alright, there's no way that my adoptive dad's brother, and either of them, would be classy enough to wear something like that. They absolutely would not. Then I took a look at this guy's face, because then again, he was really close to me, his mouth was on my nipple, and he had his arms wrapped around me, and he was sucking my nipple. I was looking at his face, and I was like, and yeah, no, that's definitely not my adoptive dad's brother. This guy is way too handsome to be my adoptive dad's brother. If you guys seriously want to know what this man in my dream looked like, he looked a lot like one of my Sims 2 characters that I created, except he was actually a real person. He had this white, shiny, ivory-toned skin, and he had these deep blue eyes. I didn't see his eyes until I started to interact with him and respond to him. But he looked a lot like the character Charlie Valentino in one of my Sims 2 live streams, which is honestly one of the most handsomest Sims 2 guys who I ever created in my whole entire life. Here's a picture of what he looked like. Alright, so that's a screenshot from one of my old Sims 2 live streams I did a couple of years ago. That's Charlie Valentino when I created him in Sims 2 Create a Sim, and I always loved Charlie Valentino. He's honestly one of my favorite characters. I actually used the wishing well to make a clone of him, so when he dies of old age, he gets reborn again and I'm able to play as him again. However, whenever I use the wishing well to make a clone of him, sometimes it comes out as a female. That's what happened the first time I used it. But, Yeah, that's Charlie Valentino, one of the most handsomest characters that I ever created in The Sims 2, which is exactly what this guy looked like. And if a man that handsome appeared in my bedroom, well, he wouldn't even have to be handsome at all. I mean, doesn't matter what he looks like, because as you guys know, I'm extremely open-minded. But especially if he was that handsome, and he had his arms around my back, and he was sucking on my nipple, I obviously would not mind that at all. Just as long as he's not my adoptive dad's brothers, because I'd be really pissed off if one of them ever thought of doing that. So there I was, sitting in my bedroom in front of my computer. This random guy who appeared out of nowhere has his hands around my back, holding me close to him, and he's sucking on my nipple, and he's doing it sensually. And then I even started to listen a bit, and I even heard him making noises while he was doing it. He was making these humming noises like that, like noises like that while he was sucking on my nipple. And I even felt his lips vibrating on my nipple too. And it was very sensual and very passionate and very romantic and very relaxing too. And also extremely arousing because I felt myself hardening up while he was doing that. My nipples were also getting hard at the same time. But the weird thing was, this man was spending a lot of time sucking my left nipple. That's the nipple he was sucking. And usually when a man is sucking on my nipples, usually he's just getting me like prepped up, like foreplay, because he's going to be making his way down to my lower area and extremities, and he's going to use his mouth on those, my more sensitive parts of my body that he's going to use his mouth on. But this man in my dream was just sucking on my nipple the whole entire time, and he was doing it for a really long time, and I was just sitting there like, okay, when is this guy going to start making contact with my sensitive parts down below? So I tapped him on the shoulder. Like, first I rubbed him on the shoulder, but he wasn't responding to that. So I tapped him on the shoulder, and I was like, dude, if you're gonna, like, suck me and use your mouth on me, there's much more intimate places for you to do that. I mean, that's not quite the wording that I used, because I'm not the type of guy who will, like, tell you to, like, suck my dick like that. But, like, I was trying to get him to... that's exactly what I wanted him to do. But when I tapped him on the shoulder, he looked, like, directly in my eyes. He opened his eyes, looked me directly in the eyes, and I saw his beautiful blue eyes for the first time. And then that got me even more stiffened up. But then he slowly pulled his mouth off my nipple, and then this is when things got weird. I saw this white stuff coming out of my nipple, and I was just like, whoa, what the fuck? When the hell was I able to do that? And it was this white stuff coming out of my nipple. I'm assuming it was milk, but it was going into his mouth, and then he was like swallowing all of it and tasting all of it, and he bucked his eyebrows for a bit, like this, like that, like in a pervy, like arousing way, and he was like looking me in the eye. Then he put his mouth back on my nipple, and he kept like sucking on my nipple and like nursing me. So I was basically breastfeeding this man, technically. I did not have breast in the dream, and I do not want breast either. Yeah, I wish my pecs were more full and more muscular, but I don't want boobs at all. And then eventually I woke up from the dream, and I was like, I wasn't even like turned on and aroused. Like, I was aroused, but not the way you guys are thinking. I was like, is that seriously possible? Is it seriously possible for me to produce milk from my nipples? I mean, that's one thing that a lot of people like point out on me and joke about. And when I'm actually shirtless with someone, they like to pinch my nipples. The men do, because if a woman did that, I'd be like, no, please don't touch me that way, gosh. I mean, well, I probably would think it was funny, but like I wouldn't get turned on by it like a guy, because I really don't like having my nipples touched, or, well, I do love having them touched, but I don't like having them squeezed or pinched or twisted or anything like that. Like, my nipples are really sensitive, so I don't like for a guy to pinch my nipples or tug on them too much, because it's painful, really. I mean, And I also don't like for a guy to like nibble on my nipples or anything like that. But if he's sucking my nipples, that feels good. But if he's like running his tongue over my nipple, like this part right here, if he's doing that like too much, that feels really uncomfortable and I don't really like for him to do that. And I'll let him know, really. But this guy was like sucking on my nipples and drinking milk from my nipples. And I already know what the term for that is called. That's called lactation, when a woman is producing milk, or anyone is producing milk from their nipples and feeding their offspring. I mean, that's usually the way it's supposed to be done. But I'm on a whole bunch of dating sites and a lot of fetish sites also, and I realize that a lot of men have like a fetish for drinking milk from tits or something like that, from breast, really. That's the correct terminology, from breast, really. I mean, I don't have breasts, but I still have nipples like everyone in existence, really. And if you want to get extremely technical about this, the reason why everyone has nipples is because at first all of the embryos, they start out as female, but then if they're fertilized with a, well, they're not embryos yet. I don't think they become embryos until after they're fertilized with a sperm. Once they're fertilized with a sperm cell, if it's fertilized with an X sperm cell, with an X chromosome, then it becomes a female. But if it's fertilized with a Y chromosome, then it becomes a male. The ovaries turn into balls, the clitoris turns into a penis, and the vagina closes up and it just sprouts out a penis. That's basically what happens. And obviously, I was fertilized with a Y chromosome because I'm a guy, so I don't produce milk from my nipples at all. However, it's technically is possible with the right hormone for a man to produce milk from his nipples, and that hormone is called, let me double check real quick, prolactin. Yeah, prolactin. That's the hormone that someone would need to produce in order for them to produce milk from their nipples, really. So it technically is possible for me to produce milk from my nipples if someone was seriously into that. And in all honesty, I am, like, when you don't think about the side effects of a man taking prolactin, in all honesty, I kind of am turned on by that because I love for a guy to, like, suck my penis and eat my sperm, honestly, because I feel like he's feeding off of me. So even then, like, if he was like sucking milk from my nipples, I would love for a guy to actually do that. The thought of that actually turns me on when you don't think about some of the other stuff. It doesn't turn me on that much, honestly, because my nipples, I mean, it does feel good if a guy, when a guy sucks them, but I don't really consider my nipples to be, well, they kind of are, but not like, it doesn't feel as good when a guy has his mouth like sucking on my penis. I mean, that feels much more intimate and much more intense. But it doesn't really feel as good when a guy is sucking my nipples compared to when he's making oral contact with my penis, honestly. I mean, yeah, it does excite me when a guy sucks on my nipples, but I consider that more of foreplay, really. I mean, if a guy was just spending hours with his mouth on my nipple, I'd just be like, okay, dude, are we gonna take this any further? Why are you just sucking on my nipple, really? However, if he was spending hours with his mouth on my penis and sucking on my penis, I would enjoy that much more, really, and that's something I'd probably enjoy that a little too much because I would never want him to stop even after the first, second, and third orgasm. I'd want him to keep going. However, he would have to slow it down a bit because I get a bit sensitive, but I still love feeling that contact of being inside of his mouth. But we're getting off topic. That's not what I'm talking about in this video. So technically it is possible for a man to produce milk from his nipples. He would just have to take the prolactin hormone in order to do that. However, the prolactin hormone actually causes some side effects. First of all, it would likely cause me to grow breast, and I honestly would not ever want to grow breast at all. Yeah, I do want like thicker, defined pectoral muscles. That's why I use my push-up bars. But I wouldn't want to grow breast, because that's not something I would want to have. I mean, no offense to the guys who do want to grow breasts, because there's a lot of guys who do. But I myself am not one of them. I want my chest to be more muscular, but I don't want to have breasts, really. I mean, I wouldn't mind if a guy did have breasts, honestly. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm only attracted to men. I wouldn't want a female's breast, but if a male has breasts, I would find that pretty interesting, honestly. And it probably would turn me on, but it's definitely not necessary. You don't have to have boobs to be with me at all. You don't have to be a guy with boobs to be with me at all. But I myself would not want to have breasts. Just like I myself would not want to have facial hair ever. But if another guy had facial hair, I would absolutely love it, honestly. But that's worthy of a whole new episode of Joe Winko Talk. Let me read to you guys some of the other side effects of a man would have if he took the prolactin hormone. One second. It's nothing really major, but this is what it would cause. When a high blood prolactin concentration interferes with the function of the testicles, the production of testosterone, the main male sex hormone, and sperm production, low testosterone causes decreased energy, decreased sex drive, decreased muscle mass, and strength and blood count, anemia. So basically what that means is if I actually was taking the prolactin hormone, that would actually decrease my testosterone. Gosh, yeah, that would. And I need as much as that as I can get, honestly. That would decrease my testosterone, which would therefore lower my sex drive. And, I mean, my sex drive is pretty high, honestly, but I wouldn't want to lower it at all. I mean, gosh. So therefore, I wouldn't really... I was tempted on saying it would cause me to not be in the mood for having my penis sucked on a lot, but even when I'm not horned up, I would still love feeling a guy suck on my penis because it would still feel good. Because one of my past partners, even when I wasn't horned up, well, I'm kind of horny all the time, really, in case you guys don't notice, but the very few times when I'm not, and a guy still wants to have my penis in his mouth and suck on my soft penis, I mean, usually when a guy has my penis in his mouth, it's always going to be erect. I mean, really, even if I'm not horned up when he makes contact. But even if it isn't erect, on those very few instances where it isn't, I still would enjoy it anyway, especially if he's like close to me and I love feeling that contact from him, because I consider that like, it's like hugging me and kissing me. I mean, I love like lots of affection and touching me, really. Even if I'm not horned up, I still love feeling that anyway. So I would still like love to feel my penis in his mouth anyway. But if I was taking prolactin, I probably wouldn't be aroused by a guy sucking on my nipples because it lowers your sex drive and lowers your testosterone level. And I believe it even lowers your sperm production even. So that's technically not something I would want to get into, breastfeeding an adult male. I mean, because it would be an adult, absolutely. But based on like the side effects that the prolactin hormone would cause to my body, I probably wouldn't get into that very much. So, I mean, I highly doubt there's anyone fantasizing about drinking milk from my nipples. But in case you're a guy who is fantasizing about that, sorry to spoil your fantasy, really. That's not something I would want to do. I don't want to grow breasts because that would start feminizing my body, and I don't really want to feminize myself too much. I mean, to a certain extent, I will, but not to that extent, really, where I start growing breasts, honestly. I mean, the thought of me having breasts kind of freaks me out a tad bit. There actually was one guy who I met a long time ago online. We were typing to each other online. He said that he wanted me to be his like dominant top and everything. However, he said that he wanted me to dye my hair blonde and grow it out really long, which my hair wouldn't grow out really long. It would turn into an afro, but apparently he wasn't noticing that. He wanted me to have long blonde hair, and he wanted me to start taking hormones so I start growing breasts. And I was like, what? Why would you want me to do that? And he says that he always wanted his partner to be a pretty blonde girl, and he said that I stood out to him because I had green eyes, because he wanted a girl who was taller than him because I'm 6'3". Yeah, in case you guys don't notice, I actually am 6'3". He wanted a girl who was taller than him and who also had an 8-inch penis who would like fuck him in the ass, because that was all part of his fantasy. And I was like, well, dude, if you really want someone like that, you can easily go and find it, really. I mean, why are you trying to change me and change who I am? Because that's the thing, really. I wouldn't want to change a guy to become... I mean, like, in my last episode of Joe Winko Talk, the gender fluid sexual fantasy, I'll have a link to that in the pinned comments. I mean, that would be one thing that turns me on, a guy who goes back and forth from being the masculine look to the feminine look. I'm not going to lie, that is one thing that I recently have gotten into. But I wouldn't try to force that on anyone, because I understand that that would make him really uncomfortable, which would make me really uncomfortable if I was turning into a female and if I had boobs and everything. I don't want to have breasts, honestly. I mean, just like I don't require a man to have breasts to be with me either. I mean, I kind of would prefer for him not to, but it would turn me on if he did. But I kind of would prefer for him not to. I mean, I know that kind of contradicts itself, but I really would prefer for him not to have breasts because I'm mainly into men. I don't mind if he has, like, feminine stuff about him, really, but I'm mainly into men, really. Like, if he wanted to dress up as a woman, I mean, if he did that once in a while, that would arouse me, really. But it would be awkward if he did that every single day, because I would feel like I'm with a woman, even though I'm supposed to be with a man. Well, not necessarily. I mean, if I pay enough attention to him, I would know that he's still a guy, but still, really. It's kind of difficult to explain. Sorry about that. My whole autism mind is in overload mode. But there's another thing I wanted to mention in this episode. So, if I was, like, producing milk, like, from my... Well, when a human produces milk, like, another thing about me is that I'm lactose intolerant. Like, I can't just drink any normal milk from a grocery store. I have to have, like, a lactated milk. Otherwise, it upsets my stomach and bothers my stomach. I'm not sure if this is true. This is something that I overheard my adoptive parents talking about a long time ago. But if a lactose intolerant person drank milk from another person, they wouldn't experience the symptoms of someone who's lactose intolerant. I'm not sure why this would be, because I didn't really research this much before doing this episode of Joe Winko Talk. But for those of you guys who are more educated on this, we can talk about it in the comments, since that's another point of my video, is to start a conversation with you guys. But if a human drank milk that was produced by another human, this is what my adoptive parents were saying, so I could be wrong on this. Correct me. Feel free to correct me if I am. They wouldn't experience the feeling of lactose intolerant, like the symptoms of lactose intolerant, when a lactose intolerant person drinks milk from a cow. That's where milk usually comes from when you get it in grocery stores, milk from a cow, because it would be milk from another organism that they are also part of. I'm not sure if I explained that right, but it would be human milk, so it wouldn't have that effect on them at all. However, it is dangerous to drink human milk from someone who you don't really know their medical history. But I'm all clean. I got tested regularly, in case you guys are wondering. And plus, I've been keeping to myself for the past 4 months, which is why my mind is thinking about stuff like this a lot more often than usual. But that's the thing, really. Like, if a human was drinking milk from another human and they were lactose intolerant, they wouldn't start feeling the symptoms of their lactose intolerance. It wouldn't cause an allergic reaction to them, really. I'm not exactly sure if that's true. That's just something that my adoptive parents said, but that's something that I always thought. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, though. But yeah, that was the dream I had. I was having a dream that this really handsome guy was sucking on my nipples. I didn't know why he was spending so much time sucking on my nipples, but then he showed me that because he was sucking the milk out of my nipples, which kind of arouses me, but not something that I'm really into, because if I took the prolactin hormone for me to produce milk, it would cause a lot of other side effects, like lowering my testosterone levels, which is definitely not something I want to do, even though it causes me to grow a lot of facial hair and body hair and stuff like that. I wish there was a way to just redirect it to my sexual functions instead. But it would cause a man to lower his sex drive and everything. I even remember, I should have sworn I remember seeing this on an episode of the Tyra Banks show, but there was actually one man who went on the Tyra Banks episode who was breastfeeding a baby, and then Tyra Banks was making fun of him because of it. I should have sworn that this actually happened. I tried asking online if I could find a clip of this, but no one had a clip of this, but I should have sworn I remember this happening. She was making fun of him because he was breastfeeding a baby, and she was telling him, "Oh, so you want to breastfeed a baby? Do you want to have your own baby? Would you want it to come out of the tip of your penis?" And everyone in the audience was laughing at him, and he looked like mortified and everything. And I was like, oh, come on, what the hell, really? I mean, I wouldn't want to breastfeed an infant at all. That sounds kind of awkward. I wouldn't be into that. I mean, usually, I mean, when that's going on, they're not, I mean, it's just a mother breastfeeding her kid. Usually it's her own biological kid. I mean, usually always it is, really. I mean, for me, I mean, I wouldn't want to breastfeed an infant at all. I would only want to breastfeed an adult man, really. But usually, well, in all the fetish sites, adult men are into being breastfed and everything. But the side effects that the prolactin hormone would have on my body, it doesn't really put that on my sexual bucket list at all. So I wouldn't want to produce milk from my chest, I mean from my nipples at all, because it would cause me to develop breasts, which some men would be into having, but I wouldn't be into that at all. Also, in case you're wondering, I really don't like putting my mouth on stuff, as in I don't suck penis at all, and I wouldn't really want to suck on a guy's nipples, because, I mean, it's the weird thing about me for some reason. I don't like putting my mouth on stuff. That's the reason why I'm so skinny, really, because I don't like putting stuff in my mouth or putting my mouth on stuff. I prefer for men to put their mouths on me instead, and a lot of people bash me for that and call me selfish for it, but that is worthy of a whole new episode of Joe Winko Talk, so I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, technically it is possible for a man to produce milk from his nipples, and I thought that was really interesting if they have the prolactin hormone. But I'm not exactly sure how a man would take that hormone. Would he have to take pills, or would he have to inject it into himself? Either way, it's something that I'm not into, so I didn't really look into that much. But if you guys know more about that, feel free to type about it in the comments, and I'll give you guys my input on it, because I always try to reply to every single comment on all my YouTube videos, really. But, yeah. So that's it for this episode of Joe Winko Talk. It wasn't quite as fun to talk about as my last one. I mean, yeah, I mean, I would love to have a guy suck on my nipples, but that's not the main thing I want him to suck on, like this guy in the stream was. And I'm really glad it wasn't my adoptive dad's brother, because I would have been really pissed off if he was doing that. But it wasn't. This was a much more handsome and very classy, too, for him to wear a suit like that while he's making sexual contact with me. I wouldn't necessarily say he was sexually pleasuring me, because he was only sucking my nipple. If he was sucking my penis, that would have been a different story. But he was only sucking my nipple, so it wasn't really as hot and heavy as I was intending on it to be when I first started talking about this. But yeah, that's it for this episode of Joe Winko Talk. That's basically all I have to say about this particular topic. What did you think of it, really? I mean, honestly, I would not want a guy to suck my nipples that much, and for that to be his main focus. I mean, you guys should already know exactly the thing I would want him to suck on the most is, really. But in case you don't know, I would prefer him to suck on my penis all the time, really. Not on my nipples, because that wouldn't be as fun as it... I mean, it would be fun and pleasurable, but not nearly as fun and pleasurable as he could make it if he was sucking on my penis instead. So that's all I'm going to say about this right now. So don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe, and tell me what you think of this weird sex dream I had. I mean, I can't even call it a sex dream. The man was really handsome, but he was only sucking on my nipples. So yeah, don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. So that's it. Peace out, people.